Hi, my name is Jungook Kim. I'm an assistant professor of management here at Chatham University. I teach management. In my case, I teach mostly human resource management, managing people and understanding human behaviors in business organizations specifically. So when I teach my course, for example, human resource management or human behaviors in organizations, I actually try to use as many examples as possible from Asian countries, because when it comes to human behaviors in an organization specifically, you can see lots of pretty huge differences in between what the US-based workers do and what the Asian workers do in their workplaces. So that's what I'm trying to bring into my classes, because there are only very few things that you can say universal in terms of managing people or treating people or working with people. So in my class, I always try to contextualize what I teach. So how different it can be, even when we see some specific information from the textbook, I always kind of give heads up to the students that things can be very different in different cultural contexts, especially more so in Asian context, because things can be relatively more similar in European countries when thinking about the US context. But Asian countries, they can be really different, and that's what's exciting about. So in terms of business management, learning about Asia and Asian cultures is crucial. Well, first of all, Asia is the powerhouse of the global economy. So eventually what happens in Asian countries will influence the US economy in a certain way. So for example, most of the students I teach here at Chatham University's business program, they will eventually get a job in local businesses. But still, these local businesses will, to some extent, be influenced by what happens in Asia, because Asia is a huge source of, for example, like labor force. And what happens there will eventually influence what happens in the US. So the global economy is so interconnected. So you cannot have a whole picture of the economy and what happens in the business world without understanding what happens in Asia. And also at the same time, like I said in the previous question, people are very different. People behave very differently. So, for example, employees in Asian countries will have very different expectations, very different ideas about, for example, work ethics, what's expected of them, and what they expect of the employers, for example, in terms of employment relations. And also consumer behaviors are very different too. They behave very differently because human behaviors are largely culturally defined. So understanding these Asian countries and Asian cultures better will eventually lead to their edge, students' edge of doing their businesses and working with other people in the future context. Yes, the question was about how I get my students excited about learning more about Asian cultures or Asian countries. To be very honest, I wish I knew the answer. Getting students excited about something is always a challenge. But at least in my case, I try to let the students do their work. Me speaking in front of the students about this and about that, it's not that exciting. So, for example, in my human resource management course or another course that I used to teach, compensation benefits, I dedicated one full week on international human resource management or international compensation practices. I let the students choose one country they are interested in and then do the research to compare and contrast what's going on there and what it is like in the US. And of course, always many students choose Asian countries. Some students, just because they know that I'm from Korea, there are always a few students who choose Korea as their, research. And what they, learn through this experience is pretty big. Sometimes I get a very, very, strong response from the students that they really didn't have any idea how different things could be in this different national context or cultural context. And I think that's the starting point. Let the students choose a country. For example, I can encourage them to try to learn more about Asian cultures and Asian, businesses because of these, huge differences, or comparably a little bit, greater differences than the European countries, for example. So I just encourage them to try to learn more about Asian context, why this is so important. That's all I can talk about, right? It is important. I can tell them that it is important to learn about Asian, countries and Asian cultures, and the rest that they should do their job. So I always let them do the work. At least that's how they get a little bit more excited than just sitting there looking at me speaking.